Brees walking away from the game, with Matt Ryan getting up in age and Atlanta having to retool defensively, the Bucks are who they are, and they're the team to beat. And I think is the biggest story of the offseason, despite the fact it's not really getting told much, that, you get all 22 starters back from a Super Bowl winning team. Normally they cash in and they take off.
True.
And that did not happen. They all decided to stay. That the Panthers feel as though they had to make a move, and so they pivoted. They pivoted away from Watson and went after Darnold instead. So when you got an impatient owner, one thing I know for sure: if you don't make the move, the next move might be you.
I like that. Mike Detillier on the Out of Bounds show. Who said the NFL stood for not for long? I can't remember.
Oh, Jerry Glanville.
Yes,
Glanville
Glanville.
Years ago. And he was right, and he should know. He got fired twice in Houston, and then he got fired in Atlanta. But Jerry got enough tails for a lifetime. But, yeah, he had fun doing it.
Hey, Mike, didn't he always leave 2 tickets for Elvis at the will call or something?
Yeah, he I work with Bobby Hebert, and he coached Bobby, and he was the head coach. He didn't coach Bob, but man, Bob got stories on him. Good gracious! So yeah, it was a strange team because Jerry at first kind of tapped into it. A lot of energy. Man, they were exciting to watch, but man, that was no real control there, and it got out of hand pretty quickly with Glanville. But man, one thing for sure, he's an entertaining guest. We've had him on numerous times, and when he was with the Lions, they had a guy that was the gopher. Very similar to what Joe Brady was with the Saints. In essence, when Joe was here, it was, we would tease him all the time. Nobody knew who he was with the Saints, but Hebert and I did. But we gave him grief. Every time practice would end, we'd tell him, "Hey, Joe, when you going to go wash Coach Payton's car? Or, is it your day to go to Popeye's Chicken? Or, whatever." And he would just sort of stare, and he'd just shake his head and try to walk as fast as he could away from us. Well, the goal for Glanville when he was the defensive coordinator with Detroit, and he still calls him this, Little Billy Belichick.
Oh, my goodness. Are you serious, Mike?
And that's how he'll say it, Little Billy Belichick.
Wow.
And he knew the dad, and so they hired him sort of like an intern, and he was sort of the gopher. "Hey, kid, go wash the car. Get my car washed. Hey, kid, go get donuts. Make me copies of this," stuff like that. And, eventually it led to him as a job. He was special teams coach. And so, but even today, Glanville will talk about it. Yeah, we had little Billy Belichick, working under me and stuff. And but that's Jerry. That's just how he is. It's that's never going to change. But with the Panthers, I'm just telling you, you got to. This isn't an owner that made his money over the course of 50 years. He made his money quick. So his deal is, I spent a lot of money on this football team, and I want results quick. Don't give me no excuses. Don't tell me nothing about rebuilding. I don't want to hear it. I just want to win. 5-11, that didn't really work well with him last year. So I know he spent a lot of money on Matt Rule, who I think is a really good coach.
Yeah,
I really think Matt's a good coach. And I know Joe can coach quarterbacks.
Why does
really
Joe?
well.
What makes Joe Brady? He's still young, but people, you and many others, Sean Payton. I mean, people believe he's got all this upside and potential and talent.
Yeah, he's gonna be
What
a head
is it
coach.
about him that makes him who he is, so good and special? Mike?
his relationship with players. He gets along so well with the units that he works with, extremely well. And so you don't want to let him down because he's working a lot of hours. Look, when you like sort of say an intern with Sean Payton, you're not coming in at 7:30 in the morning, going back home at 5. He's there 5:30 in the morning. He had all that information ready. Whatever Sean wanted, he had it for him before Sean could get there. Throughout the day, that was your deal: intel, information, how things work, how things would look, and you work until 8:30, 9 o'clock at night. So one thing, that guy's putting in a lot of hours. The biggest misconception here was when he was at LSU, not with the Saints. People thought that he was hand in hand with Joe Burrow. He had a part in that, but his job was to coach the receivers. That's what he did at LSU. He coached guys like Justin Jefferson, and now we would tease him about, man, listen, I could coach Jamar Chase and Jefferson and Terrace Marshall. We give him grief about that, man. If that's the job you got, man, I want that. But he got them to totally concentrate, totally work on being the best team, best unit you could get. Now, did he have talent? No question. Man, you're talking about it on that group with Jefferson and Jamar and Terrace and Racing McMath. Man, you got an all-star team. 400 catches a day. That's what they would practice. It was repetition over and over and over again. And he got them to believe in all that. And so, man, he can relate well to young players. He gets it. Now, he does come up with, I think play calling's an art. It really is. You got to know what the hell you're doing. Come on, this ain't Al Bundy at Polk High School. you got to understand when to make a play call. And Insminger told me this. Steve, he was like, Mike, he really understands it better than anyone. And so, you get hot as a play caller, man. One play works, another play works, and and Steve would handle it. And then other times, Steve was, hey, Joe, you got anything? And if Joe would get hot with it, Steve would let him make the calls. So they work great together. And it worked great for LSU. They won a national championship. But I think it's just his relationship. He's a young guy, not much, older than the player. And so he can relate to him. He can relate to his generation. He can talk to him, same interests in certain things and stuff. And so, and man, he's a worker. And that's the first thing I want to, if I'm in charge of something, I want to know right off the bat, is he a worker? Because if that part's not there, I'm moving on. I'm moving on. And you got a lot of LSU fans that will never admit it today. Never. But when Coach O hired him to be the passing game coordinator, they raised three con of hell. Who the hell is Joe Brady? Never heard of him. Why are they hiring Joe Brady? Now, you couldn't get him today. Well, you could, but if you put him on a lie detector machine, it would blow the circuits off because they got some genius sports writers, too, that had that out there. A couple of well-known ones that wrote similar stories. Now, again, they don't want to admit it because they don't want to admit they're wrong. But, man, I knew one thing, that if he was coming here to if he was going to LSU, and I told his dad, you're going to have the best receiving crew you can get. That guy is really good, and you could tell. I mean, he just had it's almost similar to, I grew up with a guy by the name of Shane Sellers. He became a horse jockey, and one of the best horse jockeys in the world, 80s, 90s, early 2000s, before he blew his knee out. Well, he got thrown off a horse. So, yeah, something had to give because he wasn't too much of nothing. He was 100 pounds of nothing. He could walk in a field if they had 30 horses and say that's the horse. And Joe Brady was like that. He could walk out there and say that's the guy. It's amazing. He had an eye for that, talent wise. It's just like if you have a stockbroker and he has a certain stock that he knows is going to do really well. You hope that he shares that info with you, and that's the way Joe was. He just knew it, and now I told Ed after the first week, you got you because he knew Shane. I said you got Shane Sellers. He knows football. You know, Shane didn't know if the ball was stuff to pluck, but he knew how to ride a horse. It's amazing how some people are just gifted that way. And he's going to be a head coach one day. He got a couple interviews this offseason, but one day he's going to be a head coach in the NFL.
All right, so you think Joe Brady, we're talking Joe Brady with Mike Detillier, worked under Joe Moorhead, Sean Payton, and goes to LSU, and as Mike referenced, found the magic with Joe Burrow and all that talent. They won a natty. Now he's with the Carolina Panthers. He will be coaching Sam Darnold against the New Orleans Saints twice this coming season in the NFC South.
And the other thing, let me tell you, at that time when Sam came out, Joe Brady was on the staff here with the Saints. Sean Payton, at least twice on different shows he did with us, said clear cut, Sam Darnold's the best quarterback in his draft class when Sam came out.
Wow.
Not once, twice.
And I guess the Saints just couldn't make it happen because of finances to go get a Sam Darnold, Mike?
Well, you didn't want to get the 26. I mean, that's what put them at a disadvantage. If you were going to try to make a strong move, where are you picking? Okay, to give up 3 first-round picks, okay, where are you picking now? Like today, it would be 28th. You know, who the hell wants that? You know, give me a pick early. I want an early first-round pick. And so that's what puts them at a disadvantage. You might be able to go up from 26 to 20, but to get all the way up to a spot where you would pick, you know, a Sam Darnold, and I don't want to deal with the Saints unless you're talking players too.
Right.
So that's what makes it difficult when you're a successful team. You have to understand that if you want to make a move up to get a really good young quarterback, you better be willing to part with players too.
Yeah.
Because the draft choices aren't going to cut it. That deal is, what? We got to go from 3 to 28?
Well, what about now, Mike?
Huh?
Why didn't they, you know, there wasn't a lot. I mean, it was a 6th, 2nd, and 4th, or in order, 2nd, 4th, and 6th, however you want to look at it. But, I mean, that's some draft capital, but not an enormous amount. Why do you think Sean didn't make a run for him, you know, within the last week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks?
He's convinced himself Jameis Winston's the next quarterback for the Saints.
Oh, okay.
No, I'm just telling you. He has convinced himself. Now, he's not going to tell you that. I will, but he won't, because he said already there's going to be an open competition with him and Taysom. Come on. He didn't bring Jameis Winston in to hold no clipboard.
No.
Jameis Winston was brought in to be the starting quarterback.
And don't you think he sandbagged last year not playing Jameis? I mean, he knew that he had enough. Sean's so good at what he does. When Drew went out, played Taysom, didn't want to drive up the price. I mean, was he really thinking that, knowing Sean, was he thinking that far ahead, Mike?
No.
Okay.
This has always been my thought on that. That he promised Taysom he would give him a chance as a starting quarterback. Okay? And I think that Sean didn't want to go back on that.
Interesting.
his first instincts were to play Jameis. And there are players on this team that will privately tell you, I was surprised. Because when Drew initially got hurt against the 49ers and couldn't play in the second half, Sean immediately went to Jameis. Now, had he went to Taysom, what it does is it sort of rearranges things on special teams, specialty calls, that sort of thing. And he went with Winston in the second half. And so the bottom line was that I think we all thought Winston was going to come back and be the starter the next week, which didn't happen. I think he had promised that opportunity to Taysom. And I think he held forth with that promise that he was going to give him an opportunity to be the starter. And but I think it's become obvious the flaws in Taysom's game as a full-time starter at quarterback.
Yeah, they're glaring.
And so he has always liked Jameis. Almost, I know when he came out of Florida State, they had the private workout. Sean was involved in the NFC South. They can become hunters, and maybe you need that sometimes. Maybe you need that kick in the pants, that you're not the team to beat. But the consistency part with Jameis, I got told this when the Saints signed him. God bless her. She passed away last summer. But Gay Culverhouse, who is the daughter of Hugh Culverhouse, was the president of the Bucks, and she was involved with a lot of NFL situations as far as TV contracts, benefits for players, that sort of thing. Her and I became, because she used to visit New Orleans all the time. We meet up, and, man, she could talk. So we become friends, and we would kind of go back and forth about certain things with NFL. And she told me the one thing consistent about Jameis Winston is he's inconsistent. In that from game to game, play to play, throw to throw, it can look great one day, and then it looks bad the next. And I think she's right about that. And she told me the story. You know who he reminds me of is Vinny Testaverde. She said, we had Vinny. And she said at times Vinny looked great. But she said, you know, it got to the point where you get tired of the inconsistency and you got to move on. The crazy part is Vinny Testaverde, after the Bucks cut him loose, he started for 6 other teams. And he did the exact same thing with them. He flashed it, you know. So I'll be interested with Sean of can he smooth out the rough parts of Jameis's game.
Yes. This will be wild.
We've seen it where he looks so good in Tampa, and then in, you know, the flip of the field, he's totally different. But he brings you something we hadn't seen here in a while, and that is the deep ball threat. Early on, despite the fact Drew was never known to be a really good deep, because he didn't have that type of cannon, early on, the Saints did a lot of work throwing the deep ball. Devery Henderson, Robert Meacham. Now, Jameis brings you that element that, man, he can launch them. And so that safety can't sit in the box now. He's got to play deep.
I can't wait to see if this QB experiment, Sean Payton with Jameis Winston, works. That's Mike Detillier, Mike D, Saints Insider, WWL Radio TV New Orleans, at Mike Detillier on Twitter. Mike, have a great week. Thanks.
Thank you, Bo.
Love him. Mike Detillier on the Modelo guest line. You're listening to the Out of Bounds Show, brought to you by Dallas Body Shop in Ridgeland. For all your collision repair, Dallas Body Shop in Ridgeland. Also powered by Mosquito Joe. Make outside awesome. Call Mosquito Joe right now. That's Mosquito Joe.